Stop what you're doing, because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you uncomfortable. And that discomfort, that's exactly what you need right now. 2 weeks ago, I watched a man lose everything. Not his money, not his job, something worse. He lost the one thing that was supposed to be his. The promotion he had been working toward for 3 years went to someone younger, less experienced, and honestly, less talented than him. I watched him sit across from me and say the same thing I've heard 100 times. I don't understand. I'm smarter than him. I work harder. But here's what he couldn't see. The other guy woke up at 5 a.m. every single day, not when he felt like it. Every day he finished what he started. Every time, he never complained when things got hard. He never negotiated with himself when the work got uncomfortable. He just kept going, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. And people noticed, not because he announced it, because they felt it. Maybe you recognize this story. Maybe you're the talented one who keeps getting passed over. Maybe you're the person who keeps restarting the same goal for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time. Maybe you're tired of knowing what you're capable of but not being able to make it show. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote something that most people were too comfortable to understand. He said the most powerful man is not the strongest man, not the smartest man. It is the man who controls himself completely. Once you finish this video, you will never see discipline the same way again. Drop this in the comments right now. I choose discipline. I choose power. Let's begin. 1. The strong man doesn't need to feel like it. Here is the truth most people are not ready to hear. You are not disciplined when you feel motivated. You are disciplined when you don't. Any man can do the work when he feels good, when energy is high, when the goal feels close, when people are watching. That is not discipline. That is performance. Real discipline is what happens when you are tired, when no one is watching, when the result feels impossibly far away, and you do the work anyway, not because you feel like it, because it needs to be done. Machiavelli understood this at a level most people never reach. He didn't write about passion. He didn't write about inspiration. He wrote about will. Cold, calculated, immovable will. The kind that doesn't ask how you feel before it moves. Think about the way most people operate. They build a plan when they're excited. They start strong when the energy is fresh. But the moment resistance shows up, the moment the work gets heavy, they wait. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the right moment. That waiting is the trap, because the right moment never comes. The feeling never stays. And while you're waiting for the energy to return, someone else with less talent but more disciplined is already 3 steps ahead of you. Here is what the disciplined man knows that others don't. Action creates momentum, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel like doing the work. You do the work, and the feeling follows. Every single time you move before you're ready, you prove to your own mind that you are in control of it, not the other way around. Machiavelli once wrote that fortune favors the bold, but boldness is not recklessness. Boldness is moving when every part of you says, wait. Look at the people around you right now, the ones who seem untouchable, the ones whose results make others uncomfortable. Do you think they feel motivated every morning? Do you think they wake up excited about every hard conversation, every painful repetition, every uncomfortable choice? They don't. The difference is they stopped making the feeling a requirement. There is a man you know, maybe at work, maybe in your circle, who is not the most talented person in the room, but he finishes everything he starts. He shows up when others call in sick. He does the thing nobody wants to do without being asked twice. And slowly, without anyone fully understanding why, he becomes the person others depend on, the person others trust, the person others follow. That is not talent. That is discipline without conditions. And here is the terrifying part. When you become someone who acts regardless of how you feel, people around you can sense it. They can't always name it, but they feel it. There is something different about you, something steady, something that doesn't shift when the wind changes. That steadiness makes people nervous because they know, somewhere deep down, that they don't have it. And a man who has what others cannot seem to find, no matter how hard they try, holds a kind of power that cannot be bought, copied, or taken. Aristotle said we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, it is a habit. Machiavelli would agree, but he would add something sharper. The man who masters his habits masters his fate, and the man who cannot control his own actions will always be controlled by someone else's. So ask yourself honestly, how many times this week did you negotiate with yourself? How many times did you say later, tomorrow, when I feel better? How many times did you let the feeling decide instead of the decision? Every one of those moments was a small vote, a vote for who you are becoming. And right now, those votes are adding up. The disciplined man doesn't win because he never feels weak. He wins because weakness never gets a vote. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I act. I don't wait to feel like it. 2. The most frightening discipline is silence. Most people think discipline is about doing more. Wake up earlier, work harder, push further. And yes, all of that matters. But there is a form of discipline that is rarer, more powerful, and more frightening to the people around you than any amount of visible effort. It is the discipline of silence, not the silence of having nothing to say. The silence of choosing not to say it, the silence of watching someone try to provoke you and deciding with complete calmness that they are not worth your words. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote that the man who explains himself gives power to the man who questioned him. The moment you justify, defend, or clarify something nobody had the right to question, you have surrendered the frame. You are no longer operating from strength. You are operating from the need to be understood. And the need to be understood is one of the most dangerous needs a person can have. Think about the last time someone said something that got under your skin. Your first instinct was to respond, to correct them, to make sure they knew the truth. That instinct feels righteous. It feels like strength. But watch what actually happens when you follow it. You reveal what bothers you. You show where the pressure points are. You hand the other person a map of exactly how to affect you next time, and there will be a next time. Because people repeat what works. Now think about what happens when you don't respond. When you simply look at them, say nothing, and move on. The silence lands differently. It creates uncertainty. They start to wonder if you even cared. They start to question whether their move landed at all. And that uncertainty eats at them in ways your words never could. Silence is not passive. Silence is active pressure wearing no face. There is a moment in every room, every meeting, every conflict, when someone says something designed to make you react. They want the reaction. They need the reaction. The reaction is the entire point. Your emotion is the evidence they are trying to collect. The disciplined man gives them nothing. Not because he doesn't feel it. He feels everything. But he has trained himself to pause before the feeling becomes a word. That pause is the discipline. That pause is the gap between a man who is controlled by the moment and a man who controls it. Here's what most people miss about silence. It doesn't just protect you, it shapes how others see you. When you are the person in the room who speaks less, who does not rush to fill every gap, who lets others talk while you observe, you begin to carry a different kind of weight. People start paying more attention to what you say when you do speak, because they know it won't come often, and what is rare is always more valuable than what is abundant. Think about the most powerful people you've ever been in a room with. Did they talk the most? Did they explain themselves constantly? Did they rush to fill the silence? They didn't. They let silence do the work. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Silence is how that strength becomes visible to the world without you having to announce it. Machiavelli would say it differently. He would say that the man who controls what comes out of his mouth controls what enters other people's minds. And the man who controls other people's minds holds a position that no title, no rank, and no status can give you. Now here is the part that will challenge you. The next time someone says something that deserves a response, try this. Say nothing, not with anger, not with visible effort. Just let it sit, breathe, continue. Watch what happens to them in that silence. Watch how quickly they start filling it themselves. Watch how much they reveal in those few seconds while you reveal nothing. That is not weakness. That is control at its most sophisticated. The disciplined man knows that words spent carelessly are power lost. And the man who never runs out of power is the man everyone eventually stops testing. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My silence is my power. My words are my weapon. 3. The man nobody can predict. Everyone around you is trying to calculate you. They are watching how you react to pressure, watching what makes you lose your temper, watching what makes you soft, watching where you can be pushed. And the moment they find a pattern, the moment they can predict what you will do next, they stop respecting you as a threat and start managing you as a variable. Machiavelli understood this better than any political thinker before or after him. He wrote that the prince who is always the same becomes easy to defeat. The man whose next move can be mapped is a man who has already lost. Predictability is not safety. Predictability is a cage other people build around you using your own behavior. Here is what most people don't realize. When you have real discipline, when your actions are no longer driven by emotion, you become genuinely unpredictable. Not because you are trying to be mysterious, but because unpredictability is a natural result of a man who doesn't react, a man who is not moved by provocation, a man who can choose his response rather than have it chosen for him by the moment. Think about what that looks like from the outside. Someone insults you, you don't react. Someone ignores you, you don't chase. Someone tries to make you look small in front of others. You smile and continue. Every time someone expects a specific reaction from you and doesn't get it, they have to recalculate, and every recalculation costs them energy, costs them confidence, costs them control. Meanwhile, you have spent nothing. This is what Machiavelli called strategic composure. Not faking calm, not pretending you don't feel things. It is the genuine ability to choose your response rather than be taken over by it. And when you can do that consistently, people start to feel something around you they can't quite explain. A slight hesitation before they speak to you. A carefulness in how they approach you. That is the beginning of real influence. You don't need to be the loudest in the room. You don't need to be the one who dominates every conversation. You need to be the one no one can fully read. Because what people cannot read, they cannot control. And what they cannot control, they cannot stop. There is a story of a man who worked in a competitive office. Every week, there were small power games. People jockeying for position, for credit, for visibility. Most of them reacted to everything. If someone took credit for their idea, they complained. If someone challenged them in a meeting, they pushed back immediately. If someone ignored them, they noticed visibly. This man did none of that. When someone took his idea, he let it happen and quietly introduced a better one the next week. When someone challenged him, he listened and said very little. When someone ignored him, he moved without needing acknowledgement. Within a year, nobody could figure out what he was thinking. Nobody knew his next move. And because of that, nobody felt safe trying to outmaneuver him. Not because he had more power on paper, but because engaging with him felt expensive, uncertain, risky. That is what discipline builds when you let it run long enough. Machiavelli once wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few experience what you really are. The goal is not to hide who you are. The goal is to never let anyone have a complete enough picture to use it against you. Predictability is the enemy, not because spontaneity is power, but because a man who can be predicted can be played. And a man who cannot be played becomes something different entirely. He becomes dangerous in the most elegant way possible. Not threatening, not aggressive, just completely, quietly impossible to pin down. And the world treats men like that differently. Always. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I am unreadable. I am undeniable. 4. Control your time or someone else will. Here is something nobody tells you about time. The way you spend it is a public statement, not a private one. A public one. Every person in your life is watching, consciously or not, how you treat your hours, who you give them to, what you spend them on, whether you protect them or hand them out freely to anyone who asks. And based on what they see, they make a judgment about your value, about your seriousness, about whether you are a person worth respecting or a person worth using. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. He understood that a man who lets others set the pace of his life is not operating from power. He is operating from permission, and a man who lives by permission will always be at the mercy of whoever grants it. Think about the people in your life who seem permanently available, the ones who respond to every message instantly, who show up when called regardless of what they had planned, who never seem to have anything more important than whoever needs them right now. How do people treat them? Not with more respect, with less, because availability signals abundance, and abundance destroys value. When something is always there, always accessible, always easy to reach, the mind stops treating it as precious. Now think about the person who is harder to reach, who responds on their own schedule, who declines things without excessive explanation, who protects their time with a quiet firmness that doesn't apologize and doesn't negotiate. How do people treat that person? With more care, more consideration, more thought before making a request. Because they have learned, through experience, that this person's time is not a default resource. It is something that must be earned. This is not arrogance. This is the economics of attention. Machiavelli once wrote that men are driven by two things, love and fear. But underneath both of those is something more basic, desire. People want what they cannot easily have, and a man who makes himself easy to have trains the people around him to want him less. Here is where most people make the mistake. They think being generous with their time makes them valuable to others. It makes them necessary, dependable, important. But what it actually creates is a dynamic where their presence is expected, not appreciated. And expected things are not respected. The disciplined man is selective, not cold. Selective. There is a difference. He gives fully when he gives, but he decides when and to whom. He doesn't respond out of anxiety. He doesn't show up out of guilt. He doesn't stay available out of fear of being forgotten. He moves on his own schedule, with intention, and the people around him feel the difference even if they cannot name it. Think about your own week. How much of your time was actually chosen? How much of it was reacted to? How many hours did you spend on things that were other people's priorities dressed up as urgency? How many conversations pulled you away from what actually mattered because you couldn't say no without guilt? Every one of those moments was a withdrawal from an account you didn't choose to open. The man who controls his time controls the story of his days. And the man who controls the story of his days, over weeks, over months, over years, builds something that the perpetually reactive man never can. A life that actually looks like what he chose. There is something else. When you begin protecting your time with discipline, you change how others plan around you. They stop assuming you are available. They start asking instead of expecting. They begin to value your yes because they know your no is real. That shift in dynamic is not small. It changes the entire way people relate to you. And it happens not because you announced anything, not because you made rules, simply because you stopped making yourself easy. Machiavelli said that he who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. And the first command, the most important command, is not over others. It is over yourself, over your attention, over your calendar, over what you allow to interrupt you and what you don't. When you master that, you stop reacting to life and start directing it. And the people watching will notice the difference even before they can explain what changed. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My time is my territory. Nobody enters without permission. 5. Pain that goes to waste is the saddest thing. Most people treat pain like an interruption, something that should not be happening, something that needs to stop before they can continue. They wait for it to pass. They try to avoid it. They measure their progress by how little of it they feel. And that is exactly why most people stay where they are, because pain is not an interruption. Pain is information. It is the most direct signal you will ever receive about where growth is available. And the man who knows how to use that signal, who can stay calm enough inside pain to extract what it is trying to teach him, becomes a different kind of person entirely. Machiavelli did not write The Prince from a place of comfort. He wrote it from exile, after being imprisoned, after being tortured, after having the life he built stripped away completely. He had every reason to collapse, to become bitter, to spend his remaining years consumed by what was done to him. Instead, he wrote one of the most powerful books in human history, not because the pain left, but because he refused to let it be wasted. That is the discipline most people never develop. Not the discipline to avoid pain, the discipline to use it. Think about the last time something genuinely hurt you. A betrayal, a failure, a door closing that you believed was yours to walk through. What did you do with that? Did you carry it forward as fuel? Or did you carry it forward as weight? The difference between those two is not talent. It is not personality. It is a choice, a very specific, very difficult choice to look at what happened and ask not why did this happen to me, but what can this give me that nothing else could? Failure teaches precision. Betrayal teaches discernment. Loss teaches what actually matters. These are not consolation prizes. These are upgrades, but only if you are disciplined enough to process them instead of being consumed by them. Here is something worth sitting with. The people who intimidate you most, the ones who seem unshakable, who seem to have already faced everything and come through harder, they are not untouchable because life was gentle with them. They are untouchable because life was not, and they chose to learn from every hit. That is what experience actually means, not time passing, pain processed. Think about two people going through the same kind of setback. One of them stays in it, replays it, talks about it for months, lets it reshape how they see themselves and what they believe is possible for them. The other goes quiet for a few weeks, thinks hard, adjusts, and comes back with a version of themselves that could not have existed without the wound. Which one do people trust more? Which one do people quietly fear disappointing? You already know the answer. Machiavelli believed that fortune is a force, wild and indifferent. It will hit everyone. The question is never whether the storm comes. The question is whether you are the kind of man who gets shaped by storms, or the kind of man who becomes sharper inside them. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle itself is the path forward if you are willing to see it clearly. That willingness is the discipline. You cannot always choose what happens to you, but you can absolutely choose what it means. You can choose whether it ends something or begins something. You can choose whether it becomes a story you tell about why you stopped, or a reason no one can ever tell you it can't be done. Pain that gets used becomes armor. Pain that gets avoided becomes baggage. And baggage is heavy. It slows you down in ways you often cannot even trace back to the original moment. So the next time something hits you hard, and something will, don't rush to make it stop. Don't rush to explain it away or cover it with distraction. Sit with it long enough to understand what it is showing you. Then move with everything it just gave you. Because the man who wastes nothing, not his time, not his silence, and not his pain, is a man that the world genuinely does not know how to stop. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My pain is my fuel. My setbacks are my strategy. 6. Not reacting is not the same as doing nothing. This is the lesson that most people get completely wrong. They see a disciplined man stay calm under pressure, and they think he is passive. They see him not respond to a provocation, and they call it weakness. They watch him absorb something difficult without visibly breaking, and they mistake that stillness for surrender. That is one of the most dangerous misreadings of power there is. Not reacting is not the same as not acting. Choosing not to respond in the moment is not the same as having no response. Stillness in the face of pressure is not absence of force. It is force held in reserve, aimed and released at exactly the right time. Machiavelli was not interested in reaction. He was obsessed with timing. He understood that the man who moves first does not always win. The man who moves correctly, at the right moment, with the right information, almost always does. And you cannot move correctly when you are reacting emotionally. Emotion speeds everything up. It compresses time. It narrows vision. It pulls you into the other person's frame and makes you play by their timeline. And their timeline was designed to disadvantage you. Think about what happens when someone provokes you and you react immediately. You respond with whatever is available in that moment. Incomplete information. Elevated emotion. No room to think about what response actually serves you best. You give them exactly what they wanted, a version of you that is off balance, that can be read, that can be managed. Now think about what happens when you don't react. When you absorb it, say very little, and continue as if nothing significant occurred. The other person now has a problem. Their move didn't land. The script they prepared doesn't apply anymore. They have to adjust, reconsider, and in that reconsideration, they often reveal far more about themselves than you ever would have discovered through direct confrontation. Meanwhile, you are gathering information, you are watching, you are deciding from a position of calm what response actually matters and when to deliver it. This is what Machiavelli called strategic patience. Not waiting because you are afraid, waiting because you are calculating, waiting because you understand that premature force, even when it wins the moment, often loses the larger game. There was a pattern Machiavelli observed repeatedly in the rulers he studied. The ones who collapsed were almost always the ones who responded to every challenge immediately, who let their ego demand instant resolution, who confused visible strength with actual power. The ones who endured, who outlasted their enemies, who ultimately shaped the outcomes they wanted, were the ones who could hold their force in reserve and release it with precision. Think about a scenario you've experienced or watched. Someone in a competitive environment gets undermined publicly. The emotional response is to defend immediately, to counterattack, to make sure everyone in the room knows you are not going to accept it. And in that immediate defense, you hand the room two things: evidence that the attack landed, and a version of yourself that can be provoked. The disciplined man does something different. He notes what happened. He continues, and 3 weeks later, in a different room with fuller information and a clear head, he makes one move that reframes everything. Quietly, precisely, without drama. And people remember that. Not the original attack, the response. The one that came later. The one that showed that nothing had slipped past him, and that everything had been seen, filed, and addressed on his terms. That is the power of delayed action. It is not patience born from weakness. It is patience born from the knowledge that your response will be more powerful when you choose the moment instead of having the moment choose you. There is something else worth understanding here. When you consistently respond late and correctly, people around you stop testing you impulsively. They know from experience that what they throw at you doesn't disappear. It gets answered, just not when they expected it. And that uncertainty, not knowing when the response will come or what form it will take, is often more effective than any immediate reaction could be. Machiavelli wrote that it is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. And in the context of power and composure, the greatest form of that is letting someone believe their move had no effect, and then responding at the moment it serves you most. You don't need to be reactive to be powerful. You need to be deliberate. And deliberate men are, in the long run, the most frightening men in any room. Because everyone can see the fire in someone who reacts, but no one knows the depth of someone who doesn't. And depth is what lasts. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I don't react, I respond. At the right time, with the right force. 7. Who you are in the dark is everything. Here is a question most people are afraid to answer honestly. Who are you when no one is watching? Not who you want to be. Not who you tell people you are. Not the version of yourself you perform in public, in meetings, in front of people whose opinion matters to you. Who are you at 2 a.m. when the work is still unfinished, and no one will know whether you did it or not? Who are you when the habit you committed to is inconvenient today, and there is no one to hold you accountable? Who are you in the moments that will never make it into any conversation? Because here is what most people never figure out. Other people can feel the answer to that question, even without ever having access to the evidence. There is something different about a person who is consistent in private, an energy, a groundedness, a steadiness that doesn't shift depending on who is in the room. People cannot always explain what they are sensing, but they sense it, and it changes how they respond to you, how much they trust you, and how much weight they give to what you say. Machiavelli was precise about this. He understood that reputation is not built by the visible victories. It is built by the accumulation of invisible choices, the ones nobody sees, the ones that seem to not matter in the moment, the ones that define, silently and without announcement, exactly who you are. The man who performs discipline when others are watching but abandons it in private is building on sand. He might look the part for a while. He might even fool people for a significant time. But there is always a crack, always a moment where the inconsistency shows. And when it does, everything built on top of that inconsistency begins to shake. The man who is the same person in the dark as he is in the light builds something that cannot be touched, because there is no gap between the version people see and the version that actually exists. And a man without that gap cannot be caught off guard, cannot be exposed, and cannot be made to feel like a fraud. That absence of a gap, that alignment between public and private, is what people call integrity. But underneath, integrity is discipline. Thousands of unseen moments where you chose to be the person you said you were, not because anyone was keeping score, but because you understood that you were always keeping score. Think about the compound effect of this. Every morning you wake up without an alarm, not because you couldn't sleep in, but because you chose not to. You make a deposit. Every time you finish the work you started, even after the initial motivation disappeared, you make a deposit. Every time you hold to your standard, in a moment where compromising would have cost you nothing publicly, you make a deposit. These deposits don't show up immediately. That is why most people stop making them. There is no visible return in the short term. No applause, no recognition, nothing to point to and say, look what I did. Just the quiet, private knowledge that you kept your word to yourself. But over time, over months and years, these deposits build into something the people around you can feel without knowing what they are feeling. They just know there is something about you that is solid, something that does not bend with the wind, something that has been tested somewhere in ways they never saw and held. That is what makes certain people magnetic, not their talent, not their accomplishments. Their consistency, their realness, the sense that who they appear to be is actually who they are, all the way down, in every room, even the ones no one else ever enters. Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few experience what you really are. Most men spend their energy managing the appearance. The rare man builds the reality. And the reality, when it is genuine, becomes an appearance that cannot be manufactured or faked by anyone trying to compete with it. You cannot copy discipline you didn't earn. You cannot replicate depth you didn't build. And the man who has both, built in the dark, over thousands of unseen moments, stands in a position that nothing external can threaten. Because what is real cannot be taken. Only what is performed can be exposed. Be the same man in every room, especially the empty ones. Drop this affirmation in the comments. In the dark, I am the same. That is my power. 8. Stop rewarding your own weakness. The most dangerous enemy you will ever face is not a rival. It is not the person trying to undermine you, not the circumstances working against you, not the system set up to slow you down. The most dangerous enemy you will ever face speaks in your own voice. It knows exactly what to say to make stopping feel reasonable. It knows your history, your fears, your patterns, and your justifications better than anyone. It is the voice inside you that negotiates, and every time you listen to it, you reward it. Every time you give in to it, you train it to come back stronger, sooner, with a better argument. Machiavelli wrote about human nature with a clarity that made people uncomfortable in his time and still does today. He said men are good only to the extent that necessity makes them so. Left to comfort, to convenience, to the absence of pressure, most people will choose the easier path every single time. Not because they are weak by nature, because the mind is designed to conserve energy, and discipline is, at its core, a daily decision to override that design. The voice doesn't say give up. It is never that obvious. It says rest today, you worked hard yesterday. It says you deserve a break, you've been pushing for weeks. It says one exception won't matter. The pattern is already established. It frames surrender as wisdom. It frames discipline as extreme. It makes the softer choice feel earned rather than avoided. And here is the brutal truth. Every time that frame works on you, the frame gets stronger. The negotiation starts earlier the next time. The justifications come faster. The threshold for what counts as an exception gets lower. And slowly, without you ever making one dramatic decision to quit, the standard you built begins to erode from the inside. This is how most people lose their discipline. Not in one moment of obvious weakness, in 100 small moments of reasonable-sounding surrender. Think about a commitment you've made to yourself. Maybe it held for a week, maybe 2. Then one day something came up. You were tired or busy, or the stakes felt low enough to skip just once. You let it go, and it felt fine. Nothing collapsed. Life continued. And that, right there, is the trap, because your brain registered something important in that moment. Letting go was safe, and safe things get repeated. The next time the voice came, it had evidence. You broke the rule before, and nothing bad happened. So why not again? And you listened, because the argument was familiar, because it had worked before, because your own history had become the justification for repeating the exact behavior that was costing you. You trained yourself to stop, not by choosing to stop, by rewarding the stopping enough times that it became the default. The disciplined man understands this, and so he does something that most people are not willing to do. He refuses to reward the voice. Not with anger, not with self-punishment, but with action taken before the negotiation even finishes. He moves so quickly after the resistance shows up that the argument never gets to complete its case. This is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about understanding how your own mind works and refusing to be manipulated by it. Because here is what nobody tells you about self-discipline at the highest level. It is not about willpower. Willpower is finite. It runs out. The man who depends entirely on willpower will always eventually lose. Real discipline is about building an identity so clear and so committed that the negotiation loses its power. Not because you suppress it, but because who you have decided to be doesn't open the door to it. When you stop being someone who is deciding whether to have discipline and become someone who simply is disciplined, the calculation changes. The voice still comes, but it is speaking to someone who has already answered the question, someone who made the choice before the moment arrived, someone who does not negotiate, not because they feel strong, but because their identity doesn't include that option. Machiavelli wrote that he who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior. And this is exactly what he meant. Not the man who beats others, not the man who wins in public, the man who has settled the internal war, the man who has decided with finality that his standards are not up for discussion. That man scares people, not because he is aggressive, not because he is loud, because he is unmoved, because you can watch him face the same temptations everyone faces and choose differently every time without apparent effort. That apparent effortlessness is not a gift. It is the result of 1,000 private moments where he chose not to reward the part of himself that wanted to quit. Those moments are available to you, starting right now. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I don't negotiate with weakness. Not theirs, not mine. The man who cannot be stopped. You came into this video as one person. You are leaving it as someone who sees differently. You now know that discipline is not about feeling ready. It is about moving anyway. You now know that silence is a weapon that costs you nothing and takes everything from those who cannot read you. You now know that the man who cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. You now know that your time is a statement, and what you do with it is a declaration of your value. You now know that pain is not the enemy. Wasted pain is. You now know that stillness is not surrender. It is force in reserve, aimed and waiting. You now know that who you are in the dark is who you actually are. And you now know that the voice that negotiates with you is not your friend. It is the one thing standing between you and the version of yourself that frightens people. This is not motivation. Motivation fades. This is philosophy. Philosophy stays. You are not the man who waits for perfect conditions anymore. You are not the man who needs applause to continue. You are the man who disciplines himself until the world has no choice but to make room. If this video reached something real in you, like it so it finds the people who need it most, share it with someone who is capable of more than they are currently showing. Subscribe, because what comes next goes even deeper into power, psychology, and the philosophy of the men who changed history. Drop your final affirmation in the comments. Tell me which lesson hit hardest and why. Become so disciplined it scares them. Then watch. They will call it talent.